10 trillion parameters. That is one of the most staggering claims in artificial intelligence this year, centering around a reported effort by ByteDance to build a truly massive AI model. But it immediately raises a huge central question. What actual evidence supports this reported effort? And what would a project of that scale really indicate about Chinese frontier model infrastructure? To figure that out, we have to separate attributed reporting from verified capabilities and take an objective analytical look at the completely unresolved variables that define this story. Welcome to The Explainer. Here is our roadmap for the analysis. 1. The verification gap. 2. Verified systems and infrastructure. 3. Contextualizing massive parameter scale. 4. Hardware and architecture unknowns. And 5. Scenarios and future signals. Let's dive right in. Section 1. The verification gap. The FT report versus independent verification limits. So, on August 7th, 2026, the Financial Times published a major report citing people familiar with the matter. They stated that ByteDance is currently in the early pre-training phase of an AI foundation model that's targeting, quote, as many as 10 trillion parameters. Concurrently, it was reported via Reuters, who cited the Chinese outlet The Paper, that ByteDance founder Zhang Yiming specifically instructed his AI teams to avoid using competitor model distillation for this project. That right there is the origin of the massive headline. But as we know, a headline is definitely not a confirmed specification. In fact, we're dealing with a pretty significant verification gap here. Reuters covered the exact same story concurrently, but they explicitly stated that they were unable to independently verify the 10 trillion claim. Furthermore, ByteDance itself has not publicly confirmed this target, and you won't find this project mentioned anywhere on the official seed model public platforms. So analytically speaking, this remains an entirely unconfirmed attributed report. Moving to Section 2, Verified Systems and Infrastructure, ByteDance's demonstrated capabilities. While that 10 trillion model is still unverified, ByteDance absolutely possesses highly advanced, verified distributed training infrastructure. If we look at a documented timeline, we see a really rapid evolution. It starts with the MegaScale preprint back in February 2024, moves to the MegaScale-MoE preprint in May 2025, and culminates in a peer-reviewed publication at the EuroSys conference in April 2026. This timeline proves, without a doubt, a rapid, documented ability to orchestrate massive GPU clusters. Drilling down into those numbers, the original MegaScale paper documented the successful distributed training of a 175 billion parameter model across over 12,000 GPUs. Then the MegaScale-MoE paper detailed a 352 billion parameter mixture of experts model trained highly efficiently on 1,440 Hopper GPUs. So the system's competence for large-scale distributed training is undeniable. However, demonstrating a 352 billion parameter run does not inherently prove that a 10 trillion parameter project is currently active or even feasible today. Section 3. Contextualizing massive parameter scale, defining a 10 trillion target. Let's put this reported target into perspective. When you compare it logarithmically against verified multi-trillion parameter baselines currently operating in the Chinese ecosystem, you really see the magnitude of the attributed leap. For instance, DeepSeek's V4 Pro officially uses 1.6 trillion total parameters. Moonshot AI's Kimi K3 operates with 2.8 trillion total parameters. A reported target of 10 trillion is a massive escalation over those established systems. It would put it right up there, rivaling the estimated sizes of proprietary Western models like Anthropic's Mythos 5. Although it's worth noting, Anthropic doesn't publicly disclose their exact parameter counts. Now here is a really critical technical distinction we have to make. A massive total parameter count does not equate to the active parameters processed per token. Running a dense model at a multi-trillion scale is just computationally prohibitive. So sparse mixture of experts, or MoE, architectures are used. That means only a very specific subset of parameters actually activates for any given prompt. For example, Kimi 300 has 2.8 trillion total parameters, but it activates only 104 billion per token. DeepSeek V4 Pro has 1.6 trillion total, but activates just 49 billion. If this reported 10 trillion parameter model relies on a similar sparsity ratio, its active parameters would really only number in the hundreds of billions. Okay, Section 4, Hardware and Architecture Unknowns, Technical and Regulatory Variables. We are looking at a cascading series of unresolved variables that define this reported project. First is the architecture itself. While a sparse MoE design is highly likely given the scale, the actual architectural choice is entirely unknown right now. Second, things like memory placement, sharding, and runtime topology, completely unverified. Third, the active parameter ratio is unconfirmed. And finally, data provenance. Enforcing a strict directive to avoid competitor model distillation would put immense pressure on curating organic pre-training data. The source and, frankly, the sheer quality of data required to saturate a 10 trillion parameter capacity are totally unknown. Memory is obviously a massive bottleneck at this scale, but we can't just assume that all 10 trillion parameters have to reside simultaneously in a GPU's high bandwidth memory, or HBM. There's historical precedent here. The 2021 M610T model actually used CPU offloading to bypass strict HBM limits, so alternative engineering paradigms do exist. ByteDance's unverified memory strategy, whether they're relying heavily on HBM or using CPU and NVMe offloading, is a crucial unknown. It literally dictates whether this project is feasible. And then there's the hardware itself. On January 13, 2026, the U.S. Bureau of Industry and Security, or BIS, revised its export control policy, creating a case-by-case regulatory review pathway for advanced AI chips going to China. But while that creates a regulatory pathway for chips like the NVIDIA H200 or the AMD MI325X, it absolutely does not provide proof of procurement. ByteDance's specific hardware licenses, their actual cluster scale, and their exact GPU inventory remain completely unverified. Finally, Section 5, Scenarios and Future Signals, Interpretations and What to Watch Next. Analytically, there are 3 really plausible interpretations for this reported project, and we're presenting these without assigning predictive probabilities to any single one. First, genuine scale escalation. This would mean it's an active, fully funded pre-training run aiming to match top-tier global model sizes. Second, a target ceiling or signaling metric, meaning the 10 trillion figure is just an architectural ceiling or a long-term research goal, maybe leaked to attract elite talent, rather than an active run. And third, a pre-training experiment. This would be an unoptimized exploratory run that, because of stability issues or diminishing returns, might just ultimately result in a much smaller deployed model. So what concrete signals are we actually waiting for to clear this up? Well, official corporate disclosures, like technical white papers or official seed model cards, would give us direct verification. Public confirmation of BIS hardware licensing or supply chain intelligence would clarify their actual compute capacity. And lastly, market signals from ByteDance's cloud division, Volcano Engine. Things like major updates to API pricing or context windows for enterprise workloads could indirectly tell us they've deployed a significantly larger computational backend. If verified, successfully bringing a 10 trillion parameter model to inference would be an unbelievable display of massive systems orchestration and scale escalation. But remember, parameter scale is just a measure of size. It is not a guaranteed indicator of intelligence. We have to ask ourselves, does a massive parameter count alone ever guarantee frontier-level reasoning or performance parity? Ultimately, that parity will depend on the architecture, the alignment, and the data provenance. And right now, all of those elements remain entirely unknown. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.